Good morning. Last but hopefully not least, you get me. If you can bear with me for a little bit longer, this is the third piece of our Future Proofing Your Business that we'd like to bring you through this morning. I'm Maeve and it is my very, very pleasure to be here to talk to you about this piece this morning. It is something that I am absolutely passionate about. My background is in psychology, in occupational psychology, and I have spent all of my working life, which is 20 odd years, working in the area of people development, HR management, but really at the end of the day getting down to how do we motivate people, how do we get performance working in organisations, how do we equip and skill people to cope with the things that they need to cope with, how do we help them to get the best from themselves and others. And one of the things that I suppose I'm fearful for at the moment is that with all of the challenges that we face, all of the downsizing, restructuring, org review stuff that we face, that we lose not just the value that we've built in our own organisations in investing in that area, but that we forget that this is a really important area for the people who are left behind. So if I'm making a plea, I suppose, here this morning, it's around help the survivors of the change. And something that I'd like to share with you, I suppose, is some insight that we believe we have around helping the survivors of change. Where it comes from, for me, I suppose, and the first time that this really, I suppose, pinged in my head as something really important, was back around the year 2000. Those of you who are familiar with Diageo Group will know that they have a big suite of products from Guinness, Baileys, Smirnoff, wines, all of those things that a lot of us like to celebrate with over the weekend, and rugby matches and soccer matches and family occasions and all that sort of stuff. Back around the year 2000, there was a number of different kind of sub-companies in the Diageo Group. And the decision was made to bring the spirit side and the beer side of the business together, not just here in Ireland, but globally. And for us here in Ireland, that meant that the spirit side of the business, which was quite small, which was Gilbey's of Ireland at the time, part of United Distillers and Vintners, and comprised of about kind of 130 people in Ireland, would essentially be crashed together with the Guinness business, which was based in James's Gate, which had, on the sales and marketing side at that time, had about 500 to 600 people, and on the manufacturing side had upwards of about 2,000 people. I was responsible at the time for the 130 odd Gilbey's people, who had done quite a lot of skills development, quite a lot of managerial skills, understanding yourself, leadership. Quite a lot of that had been part of Gilbey's culture. And one of our fears was that people, when they were faced with this scale of change, and it was a huge change, we were putting together two organisations with completely different cultures. Gilbey's was agile, entrepreneurial, had just launched Smirnoff Ice, so literally money was walking in the door on legs. I mean, you literally, you couldn't count it was coming in so fast. Smirnoff Ice was a huge success. And all of the other spirits brands, including Baileys and Smirnoff, were flying. Guinness, on the other hand, was this larger scale, kind of slower business with huge nationwide access and coverage. Guinness was in every pub in the country. There was a huge, huge category of very well-trained, very professional salespeople on the road. Marketing was top-notch, it was slick, but it took a long time to do everything. It was very process-driven, it was very considered. Gilbey's was not considered, it was fast, it was, does it sound good? Yeah, we'll do it, come on, off we go. So two very different businesses, and we were quite concerned that the Gilbey's business would lose a lot of the skills that had been developed, a lot of, I suppose, the self-worth or the self-confidence that was in the business when it was faced with the scale of process and organisation structure and consideration, if you like, that was needed going into the new business. And one of the things we put together was what we call the Gilbey's Timeout Roadshow. And for the 130 people in that business, we put together something to get them to take some time out to reflect on what does change mean for me, how do I feel about this? And there's an opportunity to vent, which I think is very important because everybody has fears about what a new world is going to be like. It also includes an opportunity to look at what are your anchors in the change. So what will you count on, what's important, what do you have in your back pocket? If the future looks like this, what will help you to make it through? And certainly the feedback that came back from that 130 odd people, once we'd gone through that, was I actually feel, I'm still scared about the change and I'm not sure what this new organisation is going to look like, but I feel that you understand that this is going to be a big change. And I know, at least I think I know, and I'm going to try to capitalise on the skills and the key tools and the thoughts that will carry me through to this new business. And certainly watching those 130 people move into that business and disperse throughout, which is what they did. They actually dispersed into this very large organisation. You actually could pick out an awful lot of them 2 or 3 years later because they went in and hit the ground running. So they knew how to manage, they knew how to ask the questions. They didn't get everything right. They stood up for themselves, they had confidence, and they understood that reacting to change in particular ways was natural and that they would come through it. Now some people did struggle, it wasn't a panacea for everything. And a number of those people did move on and didn't fit with the new organisation. But when they did, they made a conscious decision about it because they had in their minds things like performance, values, managing, asking questions, all of that sort of stuff. So I suppose in terms of what we're looking at today, it's probably a natural evolution from that place to say, if you're going to support the survivors of change, in our experience, there's a couple of key things that will help with that. I know the training budgets are often the first thing to be cut, and I know I'm working in 2 particular organisations at the moment where I do coaching skills quite regularly for managers, and they've been put on hold because the org review is on. And actually the HR people are fighting very hard to say, if we need anything at this time, we actually need to up our coaching skills. We need to be able to ask better questions, we need to be able to explore people's motivations, we need to keep them performing, because actually we're reorganising what we do here, but we still have a delivery promise. We still actually have to keep the place working. So, understandably, there's lots of things you don't want to train on now because those people may not be there. The world may be different, so it's a redundant exercise to actually train people in particular things. But I think in terms of what we have here, there's a couple of things that you really shouldn't stop. And if you haven't started them, you should perhaps consider starting them, depending on the circumstances of where you are. Before we get into that, just having a look at who the survivors of change are likely to be. Managers, staff who were left behind to shape the new organisation. In my personal experience, because the new Diageo organisation, which was a crash together of Gilbey's and Guinness, went through a major downsizing then in 2001, a year after they were put together, and a lot of people left, including the sorts of jobs that had never ever been made redundant before. Things like field sales managers, sales reps, so a new sales model came in. Guinness sales reps were never let go. They were let go in 2001, and a very tough, very rigorous selection process allowed for those people to be exited from the organisation. There was huge guilt for those who were left behind. God, I'm the survivor, I'm the lucky one, but I'm the lucky one, and God, it's great to be here, but I feel guilty about being here. And those sorts of feelings can make people quite apprehensive and quite locked down about what they do in the new organisation. Those who perhaps wanted severance but for different reasons didn't get it. And then you have those who ducked, and it missed them. And they're breathing a sigh of relief, but who knows what's at play there. Maybe people are saying, well, I ducked, I missed it, I can go back to where I was, that's grand, the world will always be the same. It won't always be the same. Sorry, when I put these together to build it, I realised I'd actually have to keep going back and over to the laptop, so apologies for that. If you think about the level of change that we've seen, these are just a couple of pictures very quickly put together. The level of change that we all experience and we've seen is quite a phenomenon. I was in Boston in October, and outside a souvenir shop. The election was in full swing at the time. Obama hadn't made it, but the run into the tape was there, and there was a queue of people, huge queue of people standing to have their photograph taken with him. And it wasn't him; it was actually a 7-foot cardboard cut out of him. And there was people standing to, put the arm around him. Here's my photograph of me with Obama, and I can take it home. It was actually quite amazing. And what also struck me was the level of derogatory souvenirs and car bumper stickers and mugs about George W. Bush. So the level of change, the scale of suppose, change that people wanted was palpable in the air. All of the other pictures there make obvious sense. We have the Berlin Wall over here, we have Africa on the left, we have the banks. All of this reminds us of the scale of what